Okay, now this is going to be interesting because here we have something you want to see with Rashod Bateman and also something you don't like seeing. Obviously, the first round NFL draft capital is going to be massive for Rashod Bateman. That's not something I expected, to be completely honest. I was just wrong here, and I think that we were undervaluing Rashod Bateman coming into the NFL draft. Now, with that being said, we can also look at this situation and going, hey, you know what? It looks like Rashod Bateman is finding himself in a pretty bad situation playing for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, yes, the Ravens are a great team, great coaching staff, and they have a history of success there. But at the end of the day, what we are seeing is we are seeing him team up with Lamar Jackson. And now you can say what you want about Lamar Jackson. You can talk about what he is in an NFL perspective. And I think for the NFL, for fantasy, Lamar Jackson is a fantastic quarterback. But what you're also seeing is you're seeing Lamar Jackson, similar to what we said with Jalen Hurts, another quarterback that we really like. They are not going to have the overall passing volume. And when they do decide to throw the ball, it's not like it's going to be coming with a ton of efficiency. Now, I know that 2019 season by Lamar Jackson, you had him with an unreal touchdown efficiency mark, but touchdowns are the most volatile thing season to season. What you would rather see is you'd rather see yards per attempt. You would rather see just so many other metrics. And more importantly, at the wide receiver position, you want to make sure the passing volume is going to be there, and it's simply not in Baltimore. And I think that this drastically helps Lamar Jackson, to be completely honest. We knew that they were going to be going with the wide receiver here, especially after trading for the Kansas City Chiefs first round pick as well. It was a lock that they were going to be going with the wide receiver. I wanted to see them go with the Terrace Marshall. I think Terrace Marshall maybe would have provided this team with a little bit more size, and that's something that they need when you're rolling out Hollywood Brown as your wide receiver one stretching the field. But regardless, Rashod Bateman, I mean, if you're talking about metrics, he does check every single box. You have to give it to him. He checks the breakout age box. He broke out his true freshman season. That's something that is very indicative of future success at the NFL level. Also, he had a ton of production in his best season in college. If you look at the amount of production that he had on that Minnesota offense compared to the other wide receivers there, he was fantastic. He was a stud. Also, he comes in, and no, he's not some massive wide receiver, but he is a little bit oversized compared to the other guys in this class, compared to a Rondale Moore, compared to an Elijah Moore, compared to a Devontae Smith. So that is fine. Now, if we are also going over to his athletic profile, I know he's not an elite athlete, but he does check the minimum thresholds for speed that you would expect a wide receiver to be able to make an impact at the NFL level. So Rashod Bateman checks every single box now that he gets the NFL draft capital. I mean, there is no questioning his prospect profile. It's just diving into the overall situation. And I see that pretty much everybody in the chat right now is with me that they do not like the landing spot with the Baltimore Ravens. Now we have Mike Fish saying no receiver wants to sign with the Ravens while Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator. They can only draft wide receivers. Yeah, man, they did sign Sammy Watkins, but they did have to pay Sammy Watkins an absurd amount of money. They had to pay Watkins the same amount as a Will Fuller, the same amount as a Juju Smith-Schuster this offseason, something that really nobody expected. So I guess maybe you have a point there. Maybe they are having to overpay these wide receivers just to bring them into Baltimore because nobody is too excited about going there because, like I said, the volume isn't necessarily there. But if we are going through and trying to look at who on this offense benefits and who hurts from this pick with Rashod Bateman, I think it's safe to say that Lamar Jackson definitely benefits here. Yet we are looking at some other players in this offense not necessarily doing the same thing. And the number one guy I want to look at as a loser of this draft pick is actually going to be Mark Andrews. And that Mark Andrews is the one player, the one pass catcher on this team that you could have seen seeing a significant amount of targets in 2021. And he is also someone that needs targets to be productive. I understand that he has been historically efficient based on the snaps that he has played previously in his NFL career outside of 2020. But if we are talking about raw target volume, generally at the tight end position, especially when you're playing with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, who's going to be vulturing touchdowns at the goal line, so your red zone opportunity shouldn't necessarily be as high as you would expect from some other teams. You need to make sure that you are seeing a significant amount of targets, and that's just not what you are going to have now with Mark Andrews when they have a wide receiver 1 on the offense. Now, here is something that's going to be a little bit controversial, and I know he has already lost so much dynasty value before the NFL draft, but if you can go out and buy Hollywood Marquise Brown just for pennies on the dollar now, I think that's something you look to do. Because with Hollywood, he has never profiled to be a wide receiver that wins off of volume. He's never going to be a guy that you go, hey, crap, Hollywood's probably going to average 10 targets a game this season. Let's draft him in the 3rd round. No, that's not his game. His game is, hey, hopefully he gets 6 targets as we should expect. And hopefully with those targets, he just has 2 catches that he breaks off for 60 yards each and scores a touchdown. So nothing changes here for Hollywood Brown. If anything, you can make the small argument that hopefully defenses aren't paying in as much attention to Hollywood as they would have without the Rashod Bateman pick. So for these wide receivers that don't really need volume to be productive, what they need is efficiency. When you add another guy to the offense, it's not going to change their own value that much compared to a guy like Mark Andrews, who definitely needs that volume to provide you that fantasy football productivity. But please, let me go through the chat again. Ian is saying these landing spots are trash. Yeah, man, I'm not going to lie. These are pretty much worst case scenario landing spots. Imagine this draft if instead of having Trey Lance to the 49ers, you would have had Mac Jones. This would have been the worst case scenario if that would have happened. Let's go through. And Tia Kappa says, Baltimore is a run-heavy scheme. Bateman won't do anything fantasy-wise. And then N says, Urban Meyer just said Etienne was a 3rd down back. Yeah, man, just completely ignore that. That's what I was saying, guys. With that coach speak, literally, there is no reason to go with coach speak. Literally, just look at what the team is doing. In the case of Travis Etienne, they spent a 1st-round pick on a running back. When you spend a 1st-round pick on a running back, you are going to be force-feeding that guy touches. So please ignore whatever noise that is, because that is just not going to be useful for fantasy in year 1. Okay, Mike Fish is saying Roman was Watkins' offensive coordinator when they were both in Buffalo. Man, I did not remember that. Thank you for reminding us. That is definitely an impact with Sammy Watkins signing with Baltimore. But regardless, yeah, this doesn't really affect Sammy Watkins. He never really had much value regardless. This does hurt some of my favorite sleepers in a guy like Miles Boykin and a guy like Devin Duvernay. Obviously, they are almost completely off the radar now that we are having Hollywood Brown be the solidified field stretching option on this team. Then you have Rashod Bateman being, I don't want to say the prototypical X, but definitely the wide receiver that's going to get the majority of the volume, but the volume's not going to be there, so you can't be looking for the wide receiver 3 on this offense. At the very least, you're looking for the wide receiver 2, but now that position is filled. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this little video. Of course, go down there, drop a like. It helps us out so much. And yeah, hopefully we get another fantasy player draft